Hey there, AP sophomores. We are going to go over our vocab for section 2.1. And we're going to start with the section that's going to deal with Judaism. So let's look at our word base, and I'll do my best job to get you some quick definitions and think about some historical significance as well. So we're going to start with our first word, which is covenant. And again, this is just basically Google Images, what comes up when I Google covenant. Covenant is an agreement, first off. So it's an agreement with two parties, so you're agreeing. How we'll be looking at covenant is a covenant with God or an agreement with God. Now, this covenant for an ancient Judaism was made between Abraham and God. And the covenant is basically this. If Abraham will follow Yahweh or God and will follow only Yahweh or God, who Jewish people see as the true God, then Abraham's ancestors will flourish, they'll grow, they'll be like the stars in the sky, and that they will continue to prosper as long as they follow Yahweh or God. Now, if he doesn't follow God, bad things will happen because God won't be there to protect him and his people. And that is pretty much what the term covenant means. We'll get some more into that a little bit later in the chapter. There we see word two. Word two is Judaism. Judaism is an ancient religion, one of the oldest religions in the world. Again, Judaism is one of the oldest religions in the world. It's about 5,700 years old. Judaism's foundation begins with Abraham, and like we said about the covenant that was made between Abraham and God, and that the Jewish people would continue to spread the descendants of Abraham as long as they keep believing in Yahweh or God. What also makes Judaism kind of unique is that Judaism is a religion, but Jewish people are also an ethnic group or a group of people. So you have like a religion and a people. There are some people who are not ethnically Jewish, but that's not their culture, but they convert to Judaism. A lot of them convert through marriage. So they're not Jewish ethnically, but they convert to the religion. And there are the opposite too, where there are some people who are ethnically Jewish, that's their culture, that's where they're from, but they don't necessarily believe in the religion. So Judaism is both a culture and a religion. It is both. When we think of like the word Jewish, for example. You could be Jewish culturally, you could be Jewish religiously. So it's an old religion from trace their homeland to Israel. And these are the people who spread out through many parts of the world today in the diaspora, which we will talk about as well. Our next word is Abraham, and again, this is going to tie right into our first two, Judaism and covenant. Here we see Abraham, and Abraham is the man who is basically seen as the foundation of Judaism or the Jewish people. Also, though, he's seen as the person who is basically the first person of the founding of Christianity, and in a lot of ways, Islam as well. We'll talk more about that in the role that definitely Jesus plays and Muhammad as well. But all three faiths, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, do trace their origins, if you go back far enough in their books, to Abraham. Again, Abraham made a covenant or an agreement with God that if he followed Yahweh or God, that he would have his ancestors spread out and they would be successful as long as they followed God. It's important because this is really where we see it's called a monotheistic religion. Monotheism means you believe in one God. And most people at the time of Abraham were polytheistic. Abraham was even polytheistic, which means you believe in many gods. So polytheism, many gods; monotheism, one God. So Abraham is seen as basically the founder of Judaism, the Jewish faith, and he made a covenant or an agreement with God, and his people were able to spread. And his people did spread much through the diaspora, which we will talk about later. And their homeland was seen as the land of Canaan, where Abraham was from, also right in the same region basically as Israel. Our next word we are looking up is Sabbath. Now, Sabbath is pretty much seen as the day of rest, a day of prayer. It's like taking a break. So Sabbath, most of us are from Christian Catholic traditions in our school, and that's on Sunday. In the Jewish tradition, Sabbath begins at sundown on Friday. And that is when you are supposed to rest, you're supposed to pray. It's a time to kind of like reconnect, rest, and reconnect with God. And it's given to us as basically like a gift from God, saying you don't always have to be busy. You don't always have to be doing stuff. Take a breather. Think about God. Pray for the things you need to. And that is the Sabbath, which is basically a day of rest. And in Judaism, the Jewish tradition, this begins at sundown on Friday, which is when many Jewish people go to temple or go to pray. The next word on your list are the Ten Commandments. And many of you will know this from religion class. But the Ten Commandments, they were given to Moses, and they are basically the instructions on what you're supposed to follow from God, what you are supposed to do and what you're definitely not supposed to do. So the Ten Commandments are things like, thou shalt not have other gods before me is one of the biggest one, establishing foundation of monotheism with the Jewish people, with Yahweh. And again, these will continue. These are also in the Christian tradition as well. So Ten Commandments are basically what God says, here's what you're supposed to do, here's what you're not supposed to do. Let me give you 10 rules. These are what you are supposed to follow. And they were given to Moses, a prophet in the Jewish tradition. Our next word is Torah. The Torah is basically the Jewish holy book. Traditionally, as you can see, it's written on scrolls, not on paper. It's not supposed to be touched as much with your hands. There's even like you're supposed to, I forget what this is called, but you're supposed to use it to basically go to the pages and the sections you are reading from. The Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. Many Christians will see it that way. And it is basically like God speaking to the Jewish people. Genesis, Exodus are 2 of the big ones that are in there about Moses and the Jewish people being put into slavery, but then God getting them out of slavery. The laws are established here. And this is basically like the foundation, the first 5 books of the Bible in the Christian faith, but is the foundation of faith of Judaism. So the Torah is the first 5 books. Later on will come something called the Talmud, where the Talmud is basically like writings from rabbis and how to interpret the Torah and how to practice the Jewish faith. Our next word is diaspora. When we're talking about diaspora with Judaism, we're talking about the spread of Jewish people. And Jewish people were spread. Our first diaspora happened in Babylon when the Neo-Babylonians made the Jewish people spread out of their homeland. The Romans there was a huge diaspora where the Jewish people were kicked out of their homeland of Israel and spread all throughout the Roman Empire, and then continued to spread. To this day, there's about 12.5 million, as we can see here, Jewish people in the world today. Many did come back and now live in Israel, but the United States has a huge Jewish population. Europe, there's Jewish people in Latin America, and all over the world. So the diaspora was the spreading out of Jewish people, and originally in this time period, especially when we talk about it with the Romans, is the Jewish people being spread out and taken out of their homeland. They did not have a homeland for a huge part of history, for almost 2,000 years. All right, monotheism. Monotheism is basically the belief in one God. Monotheism, belief in one God. Polytheism is the belief in many gods. Judaism is a religion with, again, a God they would call, it's called Yahweh, where the belief would be in there's one God, you follow the one God. Christianity and Islam are also huge monotheistic religions that exist today. So we can see in Judaism, the belief in monotheism definitely spreads and goes out to other faiths as well and influences other faiths. That's one of the biggest things about Judaism too, is like Judaism is not only just the Jewish people. They're kind of like the Greeks who we'll read about, who are very, very influential, considering that their numbers really aren't that big in a global context. So monotheism, the belief in one God.